New Zealand Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour, thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thank you.
So the government is halting any new prescriptions on puberty blockers, saying a precautionary approach is needed while the evidence remains uncertain. I note some doctors this morning are saying there's no uncertainty. These things do help save lives and change people's lives. What's your reaction to that?
I think the biggest change that has happened in the past, shall we say, 10, 20 years is that we've moved from telling children to love themselves and value themselves for who they are to maybe you need to be someone else to be validated. I think that has been a mistake. And it seems to have been something that has taken on its own momentum. So I don't want to take away anything from people who genuinely have gender dysphoria, but it's been astonishing how rapidly the diagnosis and prescription of these puberty blockers and gender dysphoria has been. What's more, we've also seen a sudden drop-off when it's gone, shall we say, out of fashion in the US recently. So there's quite a lot going on here, and I think the government has recognised it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people. But having carte blanche puberty blockers is really not the way to go. People that are currently on them can continue. People that need puberty blockers for other medical reasons can still get them. But in terms of gender dysphoria, the idea that if you are distressed, then we'll delay your puberty and maybe you'll end up changing a gender. Those days are over. And I think that's a good thing.
Why do you think this news from New Zealand has gone so global? Why has this been so important for so many people when arguably it doesn't affect too many people?
Well, you're right. It's always been a very small number of people. There's no question about that. But I always make the point that, the most important minority is the individual. Every person has rights and dignity. I just make the point that for a long time, a lot of people have felt that they're unable to debate, unable to criticise, that if they question, then they can instantly be deemed a bad person, cancelled, doxed, ostracised. And I think when a country stands up and says, or a government at least stands up and says, hang on a minute, we're not so sure this is the right way to go, and we're going to put a stop to it and go in a different direction. Well, that's going to get attention, because what we're really doing is saying, look, you actually can make a different decision. And that I think probably is of global significance. It's a little bit like when we declined to recognise the state of Palestine a few months back. Everyone expected that the New Zealand government would buckle. And what we said was actually, no, sorry, you can make a different decision. You can use reason and logic to arrive at it, and you may end up at a different space, and people have to accept that. That is hugely liberating to a lot of people who have felt beaten down for so long.
Of course, much of the evidence has been relied upon from the CAST report from the UK, hasn't it, suggesting there wasn't enough research into the medication?
Well, that's right. And the CAST report really found inconclusive results, that puberty blockers weren't doing the kind of damage that their worst opponents claimed. They probably weren't as safe, at least in the long term, as their supporters claimed. But for me, it's always been a different issue, that we have moved from teaching people that they are inherently valuable to giving enormous amounts of stresses to children. Maybe your gender's wrong, maybe climate change is going to end everything before you have a chance at life. Maybe you are a victim or a villain in a script written years before you were born. And in New Zealand, that plays out through the treaty. In other countries, it has different historical contexts. I think what we actually need is to say to children, look, life can be pretty tough. There's challenges, but you can overcome them, and that you are fundamentally valued and capable. Rather than the amount of pressure and stress that has been put onto young people.
Just finally, Christchurch doctor, you know her well probably, Dame Sue Bagshaw, said that puberty blockers are pretty safe and reversible and could be life-saving. and she was lamenting that politicians getting involved in what she sees as a health issue. Has she got a point?
Well, I think the explanation that needs to be offered is why this health issue took off exponentially. Was that because all of a sudden something that hadn't been known for a long time was discovered? Or was it because the political context changed and that there was a mass diagnosis and prescription all of a sudden? If it was genuinely a health issue, you wouldn't see those dramatic changes in diagnosis and prescription. So unfortunately for Dr. Bagshaw, I don't know her, but I'm sure she's a very capable and valued person. There's always been a political element to this.
Of course there has, without a doubt. Now, an Aero report released this morning says there's been a clear learning gains and better behaviour and less bullying since phones were banned from classrooms, which is a good thing. The bad thing about this report suggests that yet half of the secondary students aren't following the rules. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I think the general push of education under this government is that we want a knowledgeable adult standing at the front of one classroom, not three joined together with lots of beanbags, and that knowledgeable adult will be transferring knowledge from one generation to the next. That means that they have a curriculum that has actual facts and content in it, as we've done with the history curriculum being upgraded to cover the whole world, not just a very small part of the world's history. And then you examine it by giving them exams at the end where actually they're going to get tested on the knowledge. You can't just drop a credit and sort of jink your way around it the way that students have been able to manipulate the NCEA. So those are the kinds of changes that we're making. And of course, a part of that has been, well, if we're now in a world where knowledge transfer and equipping children for the future is our goal, then why would you have your phone in the class? Is that a learning tool? I don't think so. And by the way, school actually only goes for about 180 days a year. I mean, there's 365. So, if you're a student, I mean, I wish I could go back. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but you get 50% of your time off. And then, even the days that you work, you're only going there for 6 hours. So, surely it's not unreasonable to put your phone away in those 6 hours.
It's good to hear something positive regarding this cell phone ban, and it'll be interesting to see if the media picks up on that. Just briefly, David, you may know this, the Christchurch City Council paid $1.3 million to a consulting company that's has ties with Ngāi Tahu over 3 years, that is, but it refuses to release the breakdown of how the money was spent, citing commercial sensitivity. But they always release information about other things, not this. Do you believe the public has a right to know where the $1.3 million went? I've just spoken to Phil Major. He said absolutely they should. Not necessarily itemise every invoice, but let's see what projects they worked on for the betterment of ratepayers. What do you say?
Well, I just asked the question, if this was any other contractor, what level of transparency would there be? And there's your answer, that's what should be released. Now, I would have thought that given they're a ratepayer-funded organisation, accountability is key. And if there's any suggestion that they're treating one contractor different from the others, I think there's a very major question of public interest in why that is. So it seems to me the council could avoid a whole lot of controversy by just releasing it.
I agree, because they do release information about how much money is spent, but not with this organisation, which is odd. Just briefly, this latest poll that gives the government a record low rating of 3.9 out of 10 performance. Nearly 2/3 of New Zealanders say the country is in the wrong track. How are you going to change that? Because that's bad. Do you accept that's bad?
Well, I accept it's bad, but I just, would like to just dig into why that is. So I was talking to a guy the other day, runs a catering business in West Auckland, employs 20 people. He called me because he's cash flow positive, but he is in danger of being tipped over and losing it all because he's got arrears with the IRD that were built up in the COVID period when they were giving everyone an easy run. I ended up writing to the Revenue Minister on his behalf saying, look, is it smart for IRD to send a business bankrupt when you could let them survive and then tax them more later? So from a pure, tax tax collecting point of view, is this the right thing to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, what's interesting about this case is that he's having a terrible time. The economy is working for him, but he's in risk of going under and having 20 people lose their jobs and half of them go to Australia. And people say this economy's terrible. But actually, the economy's not terrible. Remember, he's cash flow positive right now, just not cash flow positive enough to deal with the debts that he ranked up under the COVID era. And people say, oh, we're tired of you blaming the Labor Party. What are you guys doing? And I just make the point, we have created conditions which are actually pretty positive. But there's one business which is literally still dealing with the ramifications of 3 or 4 years ago. And what's more, it's the second such business that I've dealt with this month, or certainly in the last few weeks. So, that's what we're dealing with. We are still dealing with a hangover. People are exhausted. They're tired of it. It's been going on for years. They want it fixed, and it's not. So naturally, they blame the people who are on the TV each night. I understand that. But once you dig into it, our government is fixing what matters. Things are improving. But there is a big tailwind headwind or hangover from before. And it's as simple as that.
Does it worry, though, that Labor is seen as the best party, according to this poll, to handle 15, I think, of the top 20 issues, including inflation, cost of living, despite not being in government, that is, too. The economy, healthcare, housing, unemployment, poverty, National only leads on crime, law and order, and I think defence and foreign affairs. How do you explain the coalition government trailing behind Labor in this poll?
Well, because Labor have departed the arena. They're not being visible. I mean, they released their sort of odd policy about, taking money from SOEs and investing it in other businesses. I mean, that's crazy. They released their policy about a capital gains tax that's kind of going nowhere. Other than that, they haven't done anything. So they've benefited from being invisible in hard times. The government's grappling with the issues that we're visible. But we're getting the blame for it. I understand that. I understand it completely. However, the work that we're doing right now is turning things around. I'll give you another example. I was talking to someone who has a job ad agency, an online one, and they said last month was the first month in 28 months that their year-on-year job ads are up. They're up 7.5% on the previous year. They haven't had that for nearly 3 years. So, these things are turning, and just as we're being punished for the economy being pretty dire right now, I believe that the coalition government, ACT, New Zealand First, and the National Party will be rewarded when we are being judged next year and the economy recovers, thanks to the efforts we've made.
David, just finally, I was speaking to the chair and the deputy chair of Environment Canterbury. They don't seem too concerned about what the government decides to do in terms of reforms and whether Environment Canterbury still exists. What's your take on things at the moment? I know last time on the program you said that it's things need to change, and I was given the impression that Environment Canterbury in its current form may be gone before Christmas. Are you expecting to make any announcement, or is the coalition government expecting to make an announcement before Christmas on the future of Environment Canterbury or other regional councils?
I think we should just let them keep thinking that they're going to be okay. That suits us just fine.
Well, that's not much of an answer. What does that mean?
Put it this way, there won't be an announcement before Christmas. There's a procedure going on where there's going to be some decisions made. It won't be before Christmas, but there's a lot of ambition around the cabinet table to stop these guys from harassing people just trying to get on with it. And once we have the new resource management laws in place, the need for regional councils will be much less. And to the extent they exist, the way they're elected and the role they play, I think will be quite different.
And we're looking, sometime early next year, do you think, at those changes?
I think probably more mid next year, because it'll coincide with the resource management changes, and that won't come through. That law will be introduced in December and come out next year. But look, generally speaking, I don't think it's good for them to be complacent. But if they want to be complacent, we're happy with that.
All right. That's an interesting response. New Zealand Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I'll see you later.